Okay, to me, this is probably the most exciting section that I'll present today. This is areas of focus along with how we set some of our expectations. And before we go any further, it's very important for me to explain cation exchange capacity and how it's important related to soil pHs. On the right, you can see some scientific explanations. I'll read one. Cation exchange capacity is a useful indicator of soil fertility because it shows the soil's ability to supply three important plant nutrients: calcium, magnesium, and potassium. I like to think of cation exchange is how efficient the soil community is, that includes the microbial community, at holding nutrition and making it available to the tree. Like our gut, the microbial makeup of the soil is very important to the exchange of nutrition and energy. Our focus on soil health is CEC as a measuring tool, getting organic composition and carbon back into the soil, available carbon back into the soil, and the microbial community and pH. So on the left there, you can see the cation exchange capacity at pH 3.5, 5.3, and 7.0. This is actually off one of the university websites. I'm not sure which one, but anyway. So here is our soil analysis on, looks like Gravel Hill. There's been no lime in these locations in 7 years. Look at the soil pH. 7.1 with a buffer of 7.95 in the middle, 7.0, 7.1. Here on the lower red circles is the CEC cation exchange capacity. There's a starting point, 3.8. When we started all this, on average across all of our farms, our CEC was 4.6. So there's a starting point there. Trying to see in block 1 at Gravel Hill, we got some work to do. We've made a little bit of progress there in block 5 at a 4.7. But look at block 4, what we were able to do, 7.5. And then of course you can make your own assessment of how healthy the soil is based on all the other component makeups. Again, no lime in 7 years. This is the farm, my dad's farm in Putney, right there on 19. You can see the soil pHs, but look at the CECs, 7.2, 8.4, and in block 6, we've got it up to a 12.6. This is very exciting to us. Now I want to talk a little bit about nitrogen efficiency. These are tissue analysis. We're paying a lot closer attention to targeted nutrition, nitrogen being one of them, and how efficient uptake is of nitrogen. We're also rethinking our focus on nitrogen levels. 2.9 to 3.0 used to be what we would be pretty thrilled with. 2.7 we considered low, but now we're thinking that a 2.7 to 2.8 might be the new target. Reason being, it gives the tree enough nitrogen to fill out a crop, but not an overload of nitrogen where it creates a lot of wood growth. So you can see the nitrogen levels here, and the takeaway on these nitrogen levels is the efficiency of uptake. The only nitrogen we had put out was in mid-May, 30 units of ammonium sulfate granular, and our nitrogen levels are very acceptable. They weren't like this across the board, don't get me wrong, but these are very acceptable levels, and this was pretty typical of the plant analysis. Different soil types and different varieties are going to require different attention to detail. Here's some tissue analysis. The first one on the left is the desirables in field 1 at Flint River on the east side. You can see they look pretty respectable. Here are the creeks at Flint River in field 4. A little bit low on magnesium. Then look at the toms. Right there, the Stewarts in this field were all fine. And then the toms, I don't know what's going on with those guys, but we've got some work to do there. This is very exciting to me when it comes to alternate bearing. And before I go any further, I'm not knocking anybody here, but I think it's important to note in these notes that I've got here, most pecan experts have a difficult time with the following. Because of the general, common, undisputed, long-developed knowledge is hard to change. Pecan trees, what they posit is that pecan trees are genetically predisposed to alternate bear, so the only way to correct is breeding it out of the tree. You can't feed the tree enough to make it not alternate bear. No argument here, but please take a look at the last few years of our results. This information here is off of the University of Georgia website. It was on the Elliott trees were planted in 1955 and 1960. And you can see the alternate bearing there all the way up to the final year of 1998. It looks exactly like it's supposed to. I felt very fortunate to come across some Curtis information because not many people grow Curtis, and it's been a pretty exciting variety for us to play around with because it is so dramatic in its alternate bearing. And again, they're the growing seasons all the way up to year 1998. It looks like some of these Curtises were planted in 1921, which is about 10 years after ours were planted. Creek, same thing. These creeks were planted in 1981 and 1983. They do pretty much exactly what creeks are supposed to do when it comes to alternate bearing. So here is a 10-year history on the Curtises at Flint River, the Elliots at Flint River, and the creeks at Frank Weatherby Farms. These are the creeks that are planted right along the highway on 19 before you get to the ditch and the big power line if you're heading south. Few notes on here. In 2014 is when we began our extensive nutrition program. The reason the Curtis numbers dropped from 193,000 at a high to 96,000 as a high, or 98,000 as a high, is because we cut half the trees down. They were 110 years old. We cut half of them down, and we removed a field, not every other row. So it's not like we cut down every other row and then all of a sudden realized that Curtises need more light. In the blue, the Hurricane Michael pounds are estimates of the crop load that we had when Michael hit. And then the yellow there in the creeks is in 2017, we did some pretty extensive winter hedging. So on to some graphic results. Here are the Elliots on 65 acres. They're fairly new plantings, so the first year they produced, they did pretty much what they were supposed to the second year, but then look at every other year beyond that. 18, I think the decrease there is from Irma. Irma got about 20% of our overall crop. 18 is an estimate of what that crop was. Irma did take about 20% of this crop, but 18, I misspoke. That's the estimate from Michael, and then that's what we actually picked up in 19. But then look at 20, what it does. Curtises, again, that chart looks exactly like it's supposed to look in the first 4 years, but then look at from year 5 to year 10, a little bit different story. The creeks, again, period 2 was the first crop year, then nothing, exactly what it's supposed to do. There's some heavy winter hedging and maybe a little bit of Irma in this field, maybe not as much as everywhere else. Then 18 is an estimate, then actually what we picked up in 19. Here's that same graph, just presented in a different way. There's 100%, 11 in the Curtis's. I'm in 100%, 11%, 100%, 10%, and then 100%, 82%, 79, 79, and then this is the on year, which will be interesting to see if we can break 100,000 pounds with the new growth that's there from the hurricane damage. Interesting slides to us. We're glad to share them. Okay, so here we are at our stretch goals. We understand they are aggressive, but they are potentially achievable. We've laid out our nutrition plan and some success we've had with hedging and things like alternate bearing. So here they are. Cost per acre of $2,500, an average pounds per acre of 3,500 pounds, price per pound of $2.45, and a cost per pound, which is where our main focus is, at 71 cents a pound. So how do we do this? Cost per acre. Extremely targeted nutrition and water plan that's based on a 1 acre grid soil analysis that we've had done in the last year. This will allow us to put out some very targeted nutrition, help us understand where we need to build up more soils, and what we actually need to do to that single acre of soil to most benefit those 70 trees growing on that acre. Superior orchard design to minimize equipment needs and utilize autonomous equipment. Autonomous equipment is something that has not had much attention, but it is out there. The best example right now is the Gus sprayer systems from California. They're actually offering those for sale now, and we intend to have a few of them as soon as the 25 by 25 and 30 by 25 acres are all in production. The Gus systems I don't think will work in a Georgia orchard with a mix of tree ages and tree heights, from a 110-year-old tree to a 4-year-old tree, and 20 feet tall to 120 feet tall. Pounds per acre goals. High density planting to maximize leaf surface per acre. We'll dive into that in more detail in a minute. And a focus on soil health and holistic plant health to maximize output. One great indicator that we talked about earlier were CEC levels. Our goals are to have CEC levels of 10 or higher. And our price per pound goals are higher yielding varieties of higher quality. The revenue calculator is something that would assist in this. $2.45 a pound, way out of reach last year, but actually under market in many years prior. So now we'll get on to the rest of how we came up with our stretch goals.